Hey, welcome to the Travel Winds podcast. Today, my guest is Amy Linnen. I'm going to try and go over some of the accolades of Amy real quick. This is all off memory. Uh, Two-time NCAA champ in pole vaulting, Hall of Fame, Sports Hall of Fame at Kansas and the University of Arizona, fourth in the world, Pac-12 or was it Pac-10? Player of
Yeah,
the
back
year,
in the day.
athlete of the year, sportsman of the year, this and that. Licensed yoga instructor, paddleboard, surfing, Hans Heidemann's grad. I mean, just it goes on and on. Got a BS from Kansas or bachelor's degree from Kansas of
Mhm.
liberal arts, Bachelor of Science in education, and then what the heck? I just go ahead and get my master's from Stony Brook.
Yeah.
Living in Hawaii, got a lot going on, and I couldn't even go through all the other. I mean, I had it written down. I'm like, that's just too much to mention. So, other than not being successful in anything you've ever accomplished, joking,
Yeah.
how are you today?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
Now, this is going to be a fun show. I'm really excited to talk to you about life. You know, it's always cool. I love talking to people in Hawaii because it's just a different mindset when you live over there. When you're over there, like I've been there for work, so like I feel like it's different when you go there and whether you live there or you work there versus just I'm here. I'm going to go to the beach and lay on the beach for a couple of days and be a tourist. Have you found that life to be that way?
Yeah, I appreciate every day that I wake up here. I look around every moment, and really embrace it and just give thanks so much for the opportunity to be here, but also the way I was raised and the way I'm able to think about how lucky I am, and really take it all in from the food, the culture, the people, and all the scenery. It's an amazing place, and I'm just really blessed.
Well, you're blessed, but blessed with hard work and effort
Hmm.
and and sacrifice and there.
Yeah,
I don't want to shortchange,
absolutely.
but it's not like I'm just going to go to Hawaii and enjoy it. A lot of work.
Yeah, people have told me, you're so lucky, and I'm
Yeah.
like, in a way, yes, thank you so much for saying that. But I don't think they realize like all of the work that I put into and all of the sacrifice and how hard it is to just, you know, really follow your dreams and go.
Yeah.
There's so much sometimes that is pushing against you. And so I've overcome so many obstacles, and I really have paved a path for my own life to be successful and really try to make a difference so that way I had opportunity for myself.
But and I can only imagine you've been successful from a young age. I mean, gymnast. Then you
Mhm.
got too tall to be a gymnast. I can appreciate it. My sister was a gymnast all the way through college, and then
Wow.
her best friend, you might know, was Kathy Murphy, who was 5'10", 5'11", and then she going. I mean, that's really tall for a gymnast.
Yeah.
It just is.
It
Just
wasn't
the mechanics of it.
something I yeah, I mean, I didn't realize, I wasn't one who sprouted early. I didn't mature and was like the tallest girl in school at an early age. I was kind of average height and continued to grow through high school and college days. Uh, so, but I mean, I was tall even when I was competing as a gymnast. I remember I was like a head taller than
Yeah.
most of the girls that I was competing against. So, yeah, I did have some difficulties and challenges when it came to the sport of gymnastics, but definitely, again, saw the silver lining and tried to figure out how do I make this body work for me and benefit me in this sport.
Well, then it just converted perfectly into track and field. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
my
mean,
body it was taking such a beating from gymnastics, and I wasn't even fully developed, and my bones and my muscles were just still growing, and I have to say my core could have been a lot stronger to support the frame that I had, but
you're
when
talking
you're
about
growing,
a
it's
12, 13-year-old. My core could have been stronger.
I know. I mean, I'm just saying because I was putting so much torque and pressure on
Yeah.
the body, and I wasn't even fully full grown. So the body at that age, like it just takes a beating. And I remember the pain would travel, start with one joint and then other joints started to bother me. And
Yeah.
eventually the whole body would be in pain. And then when I found the sport of track and field, I was like, this is easy.
I'm supposed to land on a big 3 foot deep cushion. How hard can it be?
Yeah. Yeah, I went to practice. And of course, practices are hard and challenging, but like I never left with like a beating and feeling in
Yeah.
pain. I had such a different experience and my body could handle it, which was nice.
I th- to me, what I remember about gymnastics, the beam seemed the most blunt force trauma because when you do a
Yeah.
backflip or whatever, you just boom, and your whole
Yeah.
body, and then your all your smaller muscles are just trying to hang on for dear life,
Mhm.
you know.
Especially like learning a skill, when you perfect the skill, you land softly. But when you're learning the skill, it's a
You do,
heavy landing and it's like it's like a car accident. Like every time it's such a jolt on your body when you're just trying to perfect the skill. Eventually you get to the point where you don't even feel the landing anymore.
yeah,
You could do it on a bed of nails. You'd be so good at
learning
landing
an
because you're
aerial on a
just
4 inch wide beam. Yeah,
yeah, but
you're
in the
gonna fall.
beginning, yeah, in the beginning, it's a little bit tough. So, that's the part like people don't realize, like, oh, you make it look so easy, and they're like, well, you didn't see the thousand other tries before,
Yeah, yeah,
so
or more. Yeah.
or more, yeah.
Well, it kind of, you you had to travel through high school and then college,
Mhm.
and the Olympic hopeful and all that, being fourth in the world. I mean, that's kind of cool. But then you had to learn how to travel, be at your absolute optimum peak for what about a 5 6 second event. I don't know how
Mhm.
long it takes to run from the one end of, and then you get 3 attempts or 4 attempts.
Yep.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's a lot of
Go
pressure.
ahead. It is a lot of pressure, and I think coming from high school, traveling with your family, traveling with your coaches, having your mom and dad by your side. At least for me, I had such a great support system. And then I chose to go from New York all the way across the country to Arizona. And I just remember like the first time getting on a plane and I'm not with my mom and dad,
Yeah.
or I'm just with my teammates and my coaches. And it's like, wow, this is different. So
Yeah.
yeah, it there is that whole aspect of an athlete, um, you know, again, that whole other side that people don't recognize, the mental toughness that we have to maintain, and or emotional maintenance that we have to maintain to stay focused on the goal. But you have all these other aspects that from packing to
Yeah.
maybe not
Yeah.
forgetting equipment or making sure you have your uniform and everything is in that bag and not not overpacking so your luggage doesn't make it. Like, I mean, there's just, and then I had to travel with 15-foot poles and then bring them to air cargo or travel in the airport holding my backpack, a huge duffel bag, and a 15-foot pole bag on my shoulder by myself.
Yeah.
So that aspect was, I have so many stories about traveling with my poles and a large piece of equipment, that most people looking around thought, what is that?
Yeah.
What is she doing?
Yeah.
So yeah, I could go on for hours on just poles and traveling in the airport with poles.
But so my thing was because I've talked to like musicians, they travel with with their equipment, and
Yeah.
it's the guitar or bass set or drum set that's their baby. And if it gets
Hmm.
damaged, lost, delayed, same boat, kind of, you get a crack in one of your poles or in the chip in the end. I mean, but to the guy working at the airport, it's just another thing. He's just,
Right.
but for
I
you,
mean,
it's your baby.
we it is, and I mean, your life is literally in that pole, and we did everything to protect it. But I mean, I learned about corrugated tubing because I went down to the
Yeah.
plumbing department, and I mean, this is a kid, that I mean, I was pretty sheltered growing up, and but I always seem to observe and learn, and here I'm in Home Depot looking for corrugated tubing to stick inside my pole bag to protect my pole, so when I travel, that the poles aren't going to be damaged. And I mean, just to learn the aisle, learn to ask where it is, how to cut it, how to figure out how to, what
Cap it.
diameter size is
Yeah.
going to fit in the bag. And then, you come, all of a sudden you become well versed in Home Depot in the tool department.
Yeah,
It's like
exactly.
something that I didn't plan on learning, but in order to keep yourself safe and learning how to overcome any kind of travel accidents as far as keeping your poles in one piece and getting them there safely, then you learn those things quickly. So
Well,
that
I would
was
say you tend to pick sports. I mean, kayaking, or paddle.
paddle boarding, yeah,
No, not just paddleboard, but
or
the
oh,
boat
outrigger canoe,
outrigger. There you go.
yeah.
You
That's my
know,
new thing.
those are all big items. You can't just
Yeah,
put it in your
I mean,
backpack.
I
Think of
don't know why I
photography.
played.
What are you thinking?
I know the GoPro is my smallest piece of equipment that I
Yeah.
own. But yeah, I mean, I chose the cello. Why did I choose the cello? It was gigantic. And then I chose pole vaulting, and now I have this outrigger canoe boat that I'm, and a 12.6 paddleboard that I, lug around. But I don't know. I think it's just I
You
think
like the
it's like
challenge.
the bigger the equipment, like the more exciting the event. And at least in these cases, it just seems that
Yeah.
it's just what it is. It's more of an adrenaline and more an excitement, I guess, compared to maybe tennis or badminton.
Well, now
So
I
yeah.
interviewed a cellist, and he came up with a travel cellist, a travel cello. So
Sorry.
the travel cello, it was only like it's only like 18 inches wide, but the
Uh, how do they put it together?
no, it's together, but it's not that big. I'll send you a
Oh,
picture of it. It's pretty cool.
okay. Oh my gosh. I'm thinking it's in multiple pieces, but
No, it's one
that's
piece, but it's just smaller, and it's got like weird
wow.
cutouts. Yeah,
Well, the sound that I would love to hear it, that's amazing.
he's in a reggae band, Third World. He's celebrating 50 years with the same band this year.
Wow.
It's
That's
got
amazing. Who knows what they're going to come up with next?
travel
Maybe
cello,
collapsible pole vault poles. I don't know. We'll see.
but yeah, I don't know how that would work.
I don't know.
But I mean, yeah. Anyways, see, that's what gets me thinking. Like, who came up with like, "Oh, I'm going to wrap fiberglass in this pole, and then we're going to launch at the perfect angle."
I know it's one of those sports where I mean it definitely evolved over time. Originally the sport was a distance event. It was seeing how far you could travel as far as how long,
Yeah,
similar to like a long jump. And eventually it went vertical. And I mean it definitely evolved from, the bamboo pole to an aluminum pole to the fiberglass pole. So yeah, I'm so glad I was in the generation of fiberglass.
yeah.
Um, compared to the days of sawdust and aluminum and stiff pulling. So yeah, I was glad to be in that generation, but it's really cool to see where it's going and how much it's evolved even since I've been involved in the sport.
Yeah, which is kind of good, kind of bad because you go, God, I'm getting old.
Yeah,
I
people
watch
are like, "Do
football
you do
games.
this?"
Yeah,
Yeah.
I watch football. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my God, we couldn't do that. Well, now some of my friends they're all senior executives with teams and coaches and all that, and I'm like, they're not players anymore.
It's so interesting is that you see even gymnastics how much it's evolved. I
Yeah,
mean I feel like when I was watching gymnastics back in the 90s, like doing a double backflip was like extreme, and now like there's three twists along with the two flips that, like, I mean it's amazing how much it's evolved and the equipment has changed. So um it's interesting to be part of that world then, but when I'm asked now, like, hey, can you just go pole vault for us, can you show us like what to do
no,
or how to do it, I'm like, absolutely not. Like it's not going to happen. I just can't. I can't. My body would break in half. I think, there's other things I can do, but that's one sport I don't think as I mean there's plenty of people who do it in their seniors, but not me. I am not going to grab another pole and try to jump. I don't think ever again. And you know
and
that's been
that's
tough to
okay.
deal with. And that's okay. I've gotten to the point of accepting it, but there is a little bit of a grief moment there. There's a little bit of loss of grief and including part of your identity. But yeah, it was a wonderful sport, and I'm so glad I got the opportunity to do that.
But you've literally here. Let me find my list. You've
Yeah,
literally done so many things since then.
yeah.
I mean,
Uh,
is
I
that to
don't know if
fill
it's
that
a
void or, you know?
I reflected on that. I reflected on like what is it that why is it that I'm always been I don't know. I think I've just always been that way. I don't seem to want to sit still. You know, the whole ants in the pants was probably the term that people use growing up. And really, probably what it meant was I had probably some kind of hyper attention disorder or something that was never diagnosed because that was not diagnosed in my generation. But
Yeah,
ants in the pants was the technical
yeah,
terms
yeah.
that I had. And I feel like I still have that little bit of in my personality. And it just seems that I keep reinventing myself. And it's been because it's been taking me different places. Like yeah, from pole vaulting, I went into CrossFit. And then from CrossFit, I learned about yoga. And then from yoga, I got into stand-up paddleboard racing and, racing and surfing, and then I turned into, you know, I'm here in Hawaii and I'm starting to paddle OC1 and OC6 and being part of a team and kind of, you know, loving the competitive life again, but also just kind of pushing my own limits and my potential and seeing what my body can do. Oh yeah, and then I got into horseback riding. Like I tried polo. Like I mean, I just love life so much, and I think
Yeah.
there's so many aspects to life that I want to experience all while I have the opportunity. And I feel like, as we do age and we do get older, like I just am trying to maintain this body that is capable of learning all these things and not hurting it or being in pain. And I've I've just kind of figured out what is it that I can do that's not going to hurt me tomorrow, but yet maintain the same strength and passion for wanting to, self improve and find that gray line of where I can't go too far and not enough.
Have you
So,
gotten to the point? I'm curious because I mean, I grew up playing football and wrestling and just being that stupid young kid, literally, using my bike to jump and all that. But
mhm.
my mom said they were going to name the wing of the hospital in San Diego after me. Like go there, broken thumbs and broken shin and broken this and Anyways, how much of that do you find now? Like for me, like my thing for especially during COVID was roller skating and bowls. Like my wife got me into roller skating, and then I'm like, well, I want to do some bowls. But now, like,
Okay.
part of me's like, I want to try that trick, but I know I need to drive to work for the next week. You know, so I can't really afford to hurt my ankles, my knees.
Mhm.
So I won't try that trick today. How are you getting some of that where you go, well,
Yeah, I feel like I have this little like either the little person on your shoulder or the little voice in your head, and they battle back and forth like
yeah,
you can do this. And then the other one's like, don't do it because we don't want to be hurt for tomorrow. We don't want to
yeah,
be hurting. But then sometimes, one wins, one usually overpowers the other. Like the other day I was I lived on the island from '06 to '08, back training for Beijing Olympics here in Oahu. And my friend took me to a place called China Walls. And it's this like really cool spot where you can like watch a sunset. And most people just like sit there and picnic. But um, I like
you're like,
to,
nope.
take things to another level. And it's a really good place to like dive and jump off the rock. And, um, you know, I didn't think twice about it then. I got my friend had her camera and she's like, go ahead, go for it, see what you can do. And I just got some really cool shots of diving off this amazing rock and into the water. And but then climbing back up, I'm like realizing like, oh, like there's a wave coming, there's sea
It's
urchins
gonna
in the
hit me.
wall.
Yeah.
I gotta like time it right. And I gotta get the right handhold on the rocks to climb back up. And and again, I didn't like think too much about it, but I remember that experience. And not long ago, I just went back to that same spot, and I'm like taking a big breath, and that's like 15 years ago.
Yeah.
That's a long time. Like a lot of things have changed since that time.
Yeah.
I mean, I was training for the Olympics. My body was in pretty good shape, and now I have
Pretty
more.
good shape.
Yeah, now I'm like, oh my goodness, like thinking to myself, like, do I dive off this rock like I did 15 years ago? And will I be able to get back up like I did, 15 years ago? And there's a side of me that was like, you got this. Like,
Yeah.
don't be fearful. Don't hesitate. You've done it before. You can do it again. And relating it back to like also what I'm capable in the gym right now. Like, I mean, at the time I was doing like 3 sets of 10 pull-ups easily. Now I'm like doing 3 sets of 3 pull-ups easily. So like my strength has changed a bit and probably my mobility's changed a bit. So I'm like, how much confidence do I have in myself to, dive off this rock and then climb back up and be safe? And the
Yeah.
whole important thing is
I know
to be
that feeling.
safe, So,
Did you jump?
because I did jump and I was fine. And I was proud of myself and I got back up fine. But the nerves, the butterflies, all that stuff was 10 times, what
Yeah.
it was in the past. But it gave me that ability to, to reflect and go, okay, like give me a little bit of confidence. But the nerves, wow, the nerves were there, less, more now than they've ever been. So
But see, that's
yeah.
what I do when I go into the skate parks now. Because like,
Yeah.
I mean, the foot and a half drop that I had to learn how to drop in on the
Hmm.
company, it's the same now when I drop in a 7 foot bowl.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm less nervous on the 7 foot bowl now than I was on the foot and a half. You know,
Hmm.
but it's the
Yeah.
butterflies, it's the nerves.
Yeah. And there's like a little bit of that part that's like, you want to feel that again. You want to get to that point where you feel nervous again, and have that adrenaline rush. But, I'm not doing it every day like I used
Yeah,
to and not
yeah.
taking those chances like I used to. But yeah, I just like I posted something recently on my Instagram about, I'm not trying to go to the gym to look good. I'm not trying to go to the gym to be an Olympic athlete. I'm just trying to maintain my body so it's not in pain. And that's really the truth of it all is like people are like, oh, you're in such good shape right now. I'm like, yeah, but I'm also not in pain. Like you don't realize if I don't work out and I don't stay strong, I am every little joint will break down and I will develop all the pain that I um have because I'm not strong. So it's a whole nother purpose of being in the gym.
You know, it's interesting. I interviewed Pete Koch, who was an actor. He was an NFL player, played for the Raiders and the Chiefs.
Hmm.
Uh, uh, but he's huge. He's a personal trainer at Gold's Gym now, and
Okay.
here in Venice Beach. But when I talked to him, he was talking. You know, he's early 60s now, 62, 63, and he talks about the same thing, but in his 60s. He's like, I just don't want to hurt. He goes,
Hmm.
one of the biggest issues seniors have is literally, unfortunately, getting off the toilet because
Yeah.
their legs and their hips and everything else. So he's like, just
Yep.
if nothing else, just do air squats
Yep.
just to keep those muscles being used more
Hmm.
than you think. Because the last place you want to
Yeah.
get stuck is on a toilet.
No, I know. And that's the whole thing. I've seen it with my family and like members of my family that are older than me and how those little things become so
Yeah.
important. And, I went through a really hard time after retiring from my sport where it was like, I didn't even want to work out. I didn't want to, um, you know, go to a gym or run or anything. And then I started to develop all these injuries. And what I realized was, I had to figure out how to think of working out so that way I would be able to motivate myself
That's what I was going to
to
ask you about. How did you do that? I mean, that's a different mindset.
yeah. So to be honest, it's not easy and it's also something that I battle
But
with
you're always
constantly.
smiling at 5:30 when I see the videos of you on the treadmill.
Yeah, I mean, but I call it like a frequency wave. And
Yeah.
right now I'm I'm maintaining, I'm like kind of in a plateau, which to some people plateaus are bad, but for me, I'm really happy where I'm at right now. But what people don't realize is that I go through these ups and downs, and when I'm down, I'm really down, and I have to really struggle and climb myself back up. I've had huge weight fluctuations. I've had so many different injuries that, and then again, you have the psychology part of it where, you know, you really get to the point where you don't really love yourself and you really kind of give up on yourself. And you have to get to the point where it's like eventually you just get sick of it. Like I'm sick of hearing myself in my own head being, you know, self-loathing and just feeling like, you know, I'm not worthy. And then eventually I just kind of try to snap myself out of it and just realize like even if it's 10 minutes in the gym it's better than nothing, or even if I have to walk on the treadmill instead of run like I used to, because that was the biggest
Yeah.
transition for me to get from point A to point B where I am now. There's multiple hills and valleys that I went through to get to where I am now, but what I learned was I don't have to run anymore. I can walk and I can still have the same results. So I'm like thinking to myself, like, well, walking is not that hard. I can do this for a half hour every morning.
Yeah.
And if this is how I'm going to start my day, well, it's kind of brainless. I just have to get my clothes on, get out the door. I mean, I really I don't brush my teeth. I barely comb my hair. I just put my clothes on and go. And I don't try not to think too much. I just hear the alarm, put the
Yeah.
clothes on, get out the door, get to the gym, and then I push go on the treadmill and I just start my day like that. And to me, I've started that routine because it's been helpful for my mind, but I've seen the results in my body, and that's also motivating. Um, but I also choose, like, when I hear that alarm go off, I go, am I going to go back to bed, or am I going to do something about it? Or am I going to get up? And, I'm a school teacher and I teach the kids the same thing. I try to like practice what I'm preaching right now. And it's like, don't push the snooze button. Like just try one day and not press it and just get up. And then that day turns into two, and then that hopefully turns into three. And then just remember what it felt like to be successful on that day that you chose to get it done, and because the alternative is not fun. The alternative of, for me, it was gaining weight, not being strong, not feeling comfortable in my own skin. And especially here, I'm always in a bathing suit. I'm in my bikini for a lot of the different water sports that I do. And, I want to feel confident in the way I move and the way I look, the way I feel. So I think that's a big motivator for me. But the main thing is that I'm not in pain. I had so many injuries, major ones from shoulders, knees, back, hips. And all of those things, maybe 6, 8 months ago, were in really bad shape. And I mean, to the point where people might have just turned around and not gone to the gym.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
as I started doing little by little, the pain went away, in my back, in my knee, in my shoulders, in my hips. And I mean, my workouts are just based off of like rehab from PT. Like
Yeah.
it's thank God I have the education and the knowledge and the experiences from my trainers and my coaches, but I'm not doing Olympic lifting anymore, and I'm not doing a lot of pounding anymore. It's really, really more focused on just being healthy and
I,
listening to my
I've been doing
body.
full range of motion on the shoulders with the bands because I got that at PT.
Yeah,
Now I still do it. I still have the bands and I travel with them, you know, just to keep,
that's
I'm learning sciatic stretches, for, because I sit so much for driving and at my desk. So
yeah. I mean, I traveled on
crazy.
the plane for 10 hours and it was like, oh, there goes the back. There it goes. And I think that's, relative to your podcast, like traveling with exercise, like, and maintaining, your
Yeah.
health, like sitting on a plane for 10 hours was not helpful for my back. I did feel it afterwards. That was not fun.
Well, I want to ask you, and since you deal with middle school kids or kids,
Yeah.
how important is diet?
Um, I think it's a huge, I mean, it's our fuel, and I feel like it's what gives us energy to really kind of get through our day. And I've learned to just really, when I'm teaching kids about making good choices,
Yeah.
I tell them, and even myself, like, no one's going to tell you what to do. You might read a book, you might be advised, but really what it comes down to is you're going to have to start to observe and kind of put the dots together to see what works for you.
Yeah.
I don't think there's one formula that's right for one person, but all I know is that when I choose to eat something, I'm choosing something that's nutritious, that's going to give me fuel, and it's only going to be helpful to the body in a way where it's not like empty calories. The whatever's entering in
Yeah.
is like not an empty calorie. There's some form of nutrition there. But I do feel that living in a place like Hawaii, I'm exposed to so much good, healthy food
Yeah.
from fresh poke, to papayas and mangoes and
Pineapple.
avocados. Like the food here is just so fresh, and it's just, it's not overly done. Like you can find really great food that's healthy and close to its most natural of sources, where it came from. So I'm pretty lucky in that way, but
Well, I
I think
kind of,
nutrition.
yeah. I was just
Yeah, go
saying,
ahead.
I think, and I apologize to my daughters when they're in college when I started doing some more research on diet and food
Hmm.
because growing up pre-Google, you just kind of did what your parents did, or and you did what
Hmm.
what the commercials told you to do as far as cereal and this and that, and
Yeah.
sort of a balanced diet. And you're like, no, no, not really.
If I knew what I knew now
Oh
about
God, forget it.
food, I mean, in college, I literally drank a gallon of milk a
Yeah,
day. I drank so much milk. I don't drink milk anymore at
I don't
all.
either.
Um, I would, I didn't understand the effects of like sugar and how much like, you know, pasta, carbohydrates, like all this stuff. You have to carbo load, and I don't know how many pasta nights that we had, and you know, like I really stay away from a lot of those foods now. The foods
Yeah,
that I used to eat or be kind of, my mom would feed me Pop Tarts thinking because the box said real fruit, and
yep.
it's not her fault. It was just that we weren't educated
That's
enough
what I'm
to know
saying.
that this is a processed item, and this is not really nutritious and not a value to the person. So I mean, that's where my head was at. Like, I didn't understand that certain foods were actually just advertised to be healthy when they really were not.
I think that's why I apologize. I'm like, hey,
Yeah.
I didn't feed you Pop Tarts because I was trying to make you fat and bloated. I didn't know. It said, like you said,
Right.
it says real fruit's
Or
part of the diet.
different or different levels of chicken. Like, oh, eat chicken. Well,
Yeah.
the different levels, there's different grades of chicken or meat. And I didn't realize like a chicken nugget from McDonald's would be any different than, a
So you see how
fresh
it's made.
Yeah, and then I'm like thinking, oh, it says it's chicken, it's got to be good. Like now I realize how much different, there's different grades of and levels of food.
Yeah.
So that's, I'm thankful again for that education, but wow, I mean, I definitely suffered. I think I was as far as my nutrition goes as an athlete from, you know,
Well, I mean,
eating.
that's what I'm saying. It's like imagine the amount of information that's out there on diet now
Mhm,
compared to when I was in high school. Compared
mhm,
to when you were, it's like we ate anything.
yeah,
Like just get food in your body. That was the goal
mhm,
back then.
right.
The wrestling coach was saying, stop putting food in your body, cut weight. And then the
Mhm.
football coach a month later was saying, eat more, gain more weight.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, it's a definitely huge part. And but I think it's just learning your body and listening to it the same way you're listening to it about pain or aches and pains when you go to
Yeah.
the gym. Having a conversation with yourself is and getting to know yourself is really, really important.
Well, that's kind of, you know, we talked about pain management a lot in high school. We were getting hurt all the time. It's like just what you did.
Hmm.
But then eat a whole bunch of sugar, which doesn't help your inflammation at all. It's the exact opposite. So
Right.
here you are drinking sodas and eating candy, thinking, oh, I'm going to get a little pop. And like it's making you worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
And we had no idea why.
yeah, exactly. But now we do, hopefully, right?
Yeah.
We have people like you
Well,
teaching the youth.
I hope so. I hope, yeah, it's ever evolving, which is, that's the other thing is that, there's all these different, studies and research, and it's constantly being done, but it's kind of like the egg theory. don't eat egg whites, eat
Yeah.
egg whites, don't eat the yolk. Like what, there's so many studies that go back and forth. And that's the same thing with a lot of things in life. It's just what, as an educator, is just to really teach that things evolve and things change. So you have
Yeah.
to constantly be up to date with what is the truth or what's the closest to the truth and then what's the most factual information that you can
Yeah.
get, you know. But be open-minded that that could change. What you learn today may be a lie or false tomorrow,
We
you
were
know.
literally
So
talking about that yesterday in the car, how eggs for a while were great, and then eggs were
Mhm.
bad cholesterol, but and now eggs are good cholesterol, but only and then it's
Right.
gonna be free range versus open range, or is open range better and less organic, more
Yeah,
organic, brown
right.
versus white.
Hmm.
So just like you said, do what works for you.
Right.
I gotcha. What is the deal with Coast Hampton?
Okay, so that is a brand partner. I've been so my Instagram has originally was just like I feel like most people's Instagrams was just like a personal blog and you
Yeah.
kind of just use it to communicate and keep in touch with some friends and post some cool pictures here and there. But when I got into stand-up paddleboarding, I would post a lot about my training and my races, and then eventually got the opportunity to be an ambassador. And once I became an ambassador for Joe Bark, who is, in California, he's a shaper, he's a legendary prone athlete, as well as, his whole family, they're all watermen. And they're just like, he's just a rad guy that I'm so thankful to have raced his boards and, be sponsored basically by the company of Surf Tech and Joe Bark. So eventually that led to a paddle sponsor and it led to like Sticky Bumps wax. Like we'll give, send me some
Yeah.
wax and then clothing companies and bathing suit companies. So it started this whole new element and like kind of like side hustle, if you want to say, like a little gig on the side, like doing something that I love doing, but also being creative, using my photography skills, using my writing skills, and then just, getting out there and doing what I normally love to do. And it turned into all these little different brand partnerships. And my latest brand partnership is with Coast Hampton. And it used to be a brick and mortar store in the Hamptons, but they recently gone like e-commerce, so they have a website, and I just recently did like a photo shoot with them, and
Very cool
it's a
photo shoot.
whole yeah, it came out really great. And
Yeah.
that's like the whole my background is my dad's a photographer and my mom was a model. And my whole life growing up, my dad had me in front of the camera. And I was just really inspired by my mom telling me stories about her walking the runway and doing things, where she would get free clothes and like
Yeah.
model. And I was like, wow, that's pretty rad. And I always wanted to model. And I always loved being in front of the camera and I always felt comfortable and I love the creative side of it. But during college, not like it is now, like we could not do that. We were owned by like the school. We could not have anything that anyone else had. We weren't allowed to get, sponsorships like
Totally different.
a lot of the college athletes have now. Totally different. But my dream for modeling and, never really like I always wanted to do that to some level. And I had some great opportunities here and there. I recently did sign with an agency here in Hawaii.
Oh, nice.
Um, and, but I mean, I'm still, I, I'm 41 years old. I realize I'm not going to be a couture model walking the runway in Paris. And I really want to just represent my age group and kind of, inspire those that are in similar, genre as me. But yeah, the Coast Hampton was wonderful to be part of. She's a lovely lady. Her name's Lorraine, and she is just such a bright light. She really is concerned about the customer as far as what products she's selling. They're sustainable, they're organic, all of the fabrics and where they come from. All the different merchants that she's carrying are very well thought out. So I'm really glad to be an influencer and a brand ambassador for
Pretty cool.
companies just like that. Yeah, it's really cool. So it's easy to promote, it's easy to sell
Yeah.
when you really are connected to something that is meaningful and organic and authentic. So it just comes off natural.
Well, and to me, that's brand partnerships should be about instead of just
Yeah.
maximizing dollars or this or that. It's like
Hmm.
I got offered a few things what coming up in the last couple of years, and I'm like, nah. Like if I don't use it, I won't talk about it. That's just me. I'm not
Right.
I'm not to that point yet where I don't care. I just want the money. It's like, no, it's just the opposite.
Yeah. I mean, I've been there too, and I've tried products, and you know, some of them were great and just temporary, and some of them I was just like, oof, I'm not a fan, and it's harder to create content for products that you're just not that into. So yeah, you live and
Yeah.
learn, and you kind of figure out where, who works best and who works well together. So, and yeah, so it's been a fun little project
Yeah,
lately to
seems like
work with them.
it's interesting you said that because when I talked to Gabby Reese, she had to give up her college scholarship so she could continue to model.
Yeah.
So she had to go off her full ride just so
Hmm.
she could travel up to New York and do her modeling, which nowadays it's just the opposite, right? It's crazy.
I know. I feel like we have to have some compensation for, as the older athletes, that we missed out on so much. Like if my career at the time was now, financially, I would be in a way different spot.
Yeah.
Just I would have had a bigger head start, and who knows what other opportunities I would have had. So, um, you know, uh, being number one in college sports and having those two titles under my belt, I bet there would have been more opportunity for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's not like the companies didn't want to sponsor you. They just couldn't.
Yeah, we weren't allowed. And
Yeah.
we would like just like Gabby gave up her scholarship. I mean, we would have, if we didn't give it up, it would have been taken away, and we would have
Yeah.
been
Yeah.
kicked
That was her
out of
choice.
school, like, so, you know, I'm glad she went the route she did, because, you can always go back to school, but at that time she
Well,
had the
she kept
opportunity.
playing. She just played for
Yeah, and she did awesome. Like but that's the opportunity she had to face. That's a hard thing to
yeah.
face that way, giving up your teammates, giving up your coaches, your alma mater, like, you're, so that's a difficult choice.
It's a tough one, right? It's like now kids don't have to, or kids, young adults don't have to deal with that as much. Because my sister was the same way. Yeah,
No, and I'm
college gymnast. I don't know that if you're not and I've talked to several football players, but if you're a D1 athlete, it's a full-time job.
mhm,
And I don't know about more so now, but I remember my sister. I mean, it was every day. She got weighed every other day.
mhm,
So she had to worry
mhm,
about her diet. Didn't matter what time of the month it was. She had to be on weight
mhm,
every other day.
right.
And that's
Wow. What?
and I think she got a partial scholarship. It was like it wasn't even
Yeah.
not even a full ride at that
I
for
think,
gymnastics at that point.
yeah, that's a lot of pressure, and I don't think people realize what D1 athletes, what we go through. I mean, we have so much support, but at the same time, from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed, it's a constant hustle, and to do well in both and to manage your time. I mean, that was one of the things that I learned quickly was, all right, what can I get done? Um, what needs to get done first? How am I going to get time in? I mean, we would leave on a Thursday and not get back till Sunday night. I would miss half of my lectures and lessons. I remember especially for my anatomy and physiology class, because it was like one of those classes that we met
Uh,
more days a week than others, and I missed so much, and I had to be okay with not getting the best grades in that class because I just missed so much, and I just did what I had to do to get by, but
well, hold on a sec.
not receiving.
For
Yeah, go
my
ahead.
listeners that don't go to Amy's bio, what was your GPA in your second bachelor?
Okay, so
Hold on. Just
during oh
what was
well,
your what was your
I did it.
GPA?
I got a 4.01.
Hey, okay, okay, let's move on.
Yeah, I think it's important for also, like, I was a kid who, I don't I struggled in school. I was in remedial reading classes at an early age. I really was not naturally gifted with academics and understanding. I mean, I really had to work hard in that area, but I did it because I wanted to do my sport. That was the deal. If I
Yeah,
didn't do well in school, then I couldn't do my sport. I mean, that whether it was at home, mom's like, you have to do your homework before you go to gymnastics. I was like, all right, I'll figure out how to get it done,
Yeah.
or in the car or whatever. But my main motivation was sports. And people always say, oh, well, academics come first and sports come second. And I agree in most cases. But when I tell people that I put academic second, I'd tell them it was a close second. It wasn't a far second,
Right.
meaning my sport did come first. My natural talent and what I loved was sports and anything to do with athletics. However, the reason I say it's a close second is because I had to make sure that was a priority in my life, to do well in school. But I didn't do I didn't get a 4.01 like I did in college and later
Yeah,
on in
yeah.
my life. And I was smart enough to figure out how not to read the whole textbook or not how to read the whole assignment and figure out how to still do, still get A's or B's or C's to just get enough to get through it, and but yeah, it was always a
Okay,
like it's
I
like
have
a
a random
puzzle.
question for you, and it literally just
Yeah,
popped
go
into my
for it.
head.
Yeah, yeah.
You're the first school teacher I've talked to since this thought came to my head. How are you going to deal with AI?
Yeah, it's like, I think of it as
Have
a
you played with
tool,
the
like a
AI at
cal
all?
Yeah, and I think of it as a tool for like as a calculator. Like you still have to understand math concepts. You still have to understand algebra and geometry and understand where what goes where and how to solve the problem. Um, However, in certain scenarios, you plug in the numbers and it helps you figure out some part of a variable of the equation. Well, I think the same thing is kind of true with AI. AI is not it's not as organic as our thoughts in our own brain, and what comes out can be so magical and so there's poetic in our thoughts and what we write. But I think it's helpful to educators, to students, for the fact that you might have to be correcting AI, but at least it gives you some of a foundation or a little bit of a base, or maybe it will strike an idea, for
Yeah.
students or teachers. And I think it's just a tool, but you have to use it correctly. You can't just type something in and expect it to be, like the answer that you want. You really have to kind of still edit and finagle
Yeah.
and manipulate the words to make it really what your heart and what your brain wants it to express. So, but I do think it's a nice tool, and it does save some time in certain aspects. You can save time and maybe put more emphasis on something else with your time. So,
How are you going to
but
be
it's happening. If people are in,
if I'm waiting for when you get two student papers and they said the exact same thing or something so similar. You're like, oh
yeah,
my
I
gosh.
mean, I guess it's a similar question to like, what did teachers do when the internet came out and like you could like
Yeah.
Google and plagiarize like a paper on Shakespeare or whatever. And then they came up with ways to make
Yeah.
sure it's not plagiarism,
Yeah.
So I mean, we were threatened in college, you can't plagiarize. So and cite your sources, figure out where it came from. So I think something similar might happen with the AI, if it hasn't been invented already, but maybe there's a way to just make sure that this is being used properly and not
Yeah.
in a way that kids can cheat or go around it. So
Could
but
be interesting.
I think, yeah, it's an interesting, when I first heard about it, I was like shocked. I was like, what? Wow. you know my grammar, my spelling, my punctuation is not the greatest, but for me to use that and just double check, or help me maybe formulate something more poetically and in a more sophisticated manner, it's a nice tool to have, and you come across like, yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to say.
Yeah.
And that's how I want to say it. Or, no, that doesn't work. That's not what I wanted to say. Let me figure out how to, manipulate that a little bit to make it more meet my needs.
Yeah.
So I
I'm the
think,
same way. Like I use it, but then I don't think there's anything I've used where I've just typed it in and I went, oh, that's perfect. There's always
yeah.
edits. There's this and that and
Hmm.
delete that, add that.
Yeah.
But I'm just curious as a teacher, it's
Yeah. So we have to embrace it. I mean, it's just it's happening.
the
So
genie's out,
instead of
right?
fighting it, yeah, it's instead of fighting it, we'd have to just learn to, I think that's a life lesson to learn, is just when like you just have to embrace things sometimes and just kind of go with it and find the beauty in it and find the positive in it. but also be aware of what the negatives are, and be aware of, how this could potentially be a hazard, so
Yeah.
but it's again, it really is about educating yourself and kind of finding all the different perspectives and being able to make it useful and positive for whatever, whoever is using it.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that until you started
Yeah.
talking about being a teacher. I'm like, oh, I'm super curious. Because
Yeah.
my kids are out of college now, so I don't have to worry about it. But I'm just curious. Someone,
Well, yeah, it's a whole new world.
I've told so many people that the genie's out of the bottle. You're not going to put it. It's like the internet. You can't put it back in. It's like it's there.
Right.
AI is
Yeah.
the same way.
But it's not going to change someone's like character, like I think we were
No,
talking earlier, maybe even before our show started, but we talk about character and it's like, you know, it's not going to change someone's determination or perseverance. It's not going to change that. Like people who
at all.
are who they are, and I think if they're going to be a certain way, if they're going to be lazy, they're going to be lazy. If they're not lazy people, you know, I don't think it's going to deter them or, change those parts of their personality or their character in that way. I hope that if anything, it only enhances some of those aspects in a positive way, you know?
Well, I think to a certain extent, like, people my age and older think the internet and social media is stupid. And I'm like, do you have
Hmm.
any idea of how many great people I've met through social media that would have
Yeah.
never been an
And
opportunity? Huh?
maintained your friendships,
Yeah.
like people you haven't, maybe that you don't talk to or see that often, but you like to be connected to. There is a positive to that.
Yeah. And then, I mean, you start seeing, like, you were talking about depression and all that. It's like I've had friends that have made a post. I'm like, and let me give them a call. 'Cause
Yeah.
that's not a post you would typically put. So let me give them a call and see what's going on. And you find out, maybe
Yeah.
we're fighting or whatever. Not so.
I
So you
like it
can
when
use
people
social
are
media for
real.
good, or you can use it for bad.
Mhm. I like it when people are real. I try to be as real as possible. Um, and know that, we're struggling. There's struggles. It's not always perfect. And, that there's times when we're down and there's times where you cry and there's times where it's ugly.
Yeah.
And, um, but at the same time, I don't want that to like, that's the other part that I want people to know about me is like, you'll it's one part that like I try to really overcome. It's like I don't want to be there that long. Like I like to know that okay, this is something about my character. This is something about who Amy is that she just doesn't give up. She just always keeps fighting.
I think, I totally agree because I think, people see your accomplishments and everything that you've done. You can be whatever about your body, but you're posting photos, and most of the women are probably like, "Holy shit," you know, and you're like, "Oh, I need this, I need that," and most women are like, "Oh my God,"
Hmm.
you complain about being tall sometimes. Well, it is what it is,
Yeah.
you know. But I think
Yeah.
people can see that struggle, versus just the pretty tall blonde lady, that's in shape. You know, you go out with your short friends, and you're like, "Hey, that was a pretty funny video." That when I go to volleyball tournaments, because I go to the beach volleyball tournaments here, I never feel short until I go to a volleyball tournament where the women
Yeah.
are 6'1", 6'3", 6'2", and they're just walking around. You're like, I feel like a 12-year-old. Like, what happened? The men are
Yeah.
6'6", 6'8", 6'9", 6.
Yeah.
Like, where are these freaks that can?
Uh, I know it's like one of my aspects of like missing being a professional athlete and being a collegiate athlete is I miss being around all of the athletes that I would train with or just share you know um the cold tub with at the training room or
Mhm.
talk story about when we getting our ankles taped, like just talking story with like some parts of the basketball team or football players or whatever it is, and it's just like you're surrounded by all these like-minded people. They're big, they're strong, they're athletic, and not to put any of my friends down, but it's like really hard to transition and start to
Yeah.
associate with people who don't have that mindset. And then I get, oh, you're so competitive. Oh, you're so this. Oh, you're so that. And I'm like, I don't know. It's just like it's a where it seems that the breed of athletes, like we kind of I really do reach out to some of my former teammates, former competitors, just to get a little bit of like, hey, this is normal, right? Like we're normal, like we're
Yeah.
the normal ones, like every like this is okay that we're thinking like this. Just to feel like it's almost like soldiers that have gone to war. Like these are your people that you can associate with and kind of talk about life with, and they kind of get you, whether it's about work, whether it's about family, and you're just like, because you just seem to be a different breed, and the other people who get you are in that same category or in that same, you know, who've experienced same things in life like that through athletics,
I think that's true
So,
with most
um,
groups. I think that's why people like golfing or pickleball, you know, pickleball out of
yeah,
nowhere became this big sport because you could be in your 60s and 70s and do pickleball, right? But it's that
right.
how do X? I mean, that's why I still go in skate bowls. Like I'm by far the oldest guy person in at the park
Hmm.
by a lot. But it's
Hmm.
how do you that it never goes away. Like I always tell people, it's like
Yeah,
I love playing golf, but don't bet me money on it because then it just takes. I want to win. Like it just
right.
and my friends and I we play for 25 cents a hole, and it doesn't matter if it's a quarter or $3,000. I want to win, but that's how I was
Hmm.
my whole life growing up. And it just
Right.
doesn't disappear. I learned to control it a little bit, but it's hard. I want to win.
Yeah. I also think like I've transitioned instead of being better than everybody, just trying to be better than myself. And that's where, the competitive aspect, like, because I hated being told, like, Amy, you're so competitive. And I'm like, it's almost like it's like someone stabbing me with a knife when they tell me that, because it's like I'm not trying to hurt anybody in the process or put anybody down or think that I'm better than you. It's more like, dude, I want to get to the point where I want to see how good I can be. And if like you take it that way, I'm sorry, but like I'm just trying to see how good I can be,
Yeah.
but being told that is like it's like it's like being insulted, and it's hard to hear, and it's hard to like I just get like almost like that empty pit in my stomach feeling, where people when they tell you that it's like like it hurts, it really hurts, and but then it makes you hear it so often that you get to the point where it's like, well, I almost want to go the opposite way, like I almost don't care if I win,
But see, Amy,
um
just so you know, I use that as a badge of honor. Like my, my kids
yeah.
like, growing up, but they were like, "You gotta let your kids win once." And I go, "Oh, they will eventually."
Hmm. Hmm.
But why would I give? I don't want to
Yeah.
teach. But they both became really good lacrosse players all the way through college and all that.
Right.
But it's that same. I don't know. I have no problem with it. I don't know.
Yeah, I know.
I
And
hope you get
I
okay
just
with it because it's fun.
I like to, I embrace it, and it's like I just want to share,
Yeah.
what I've learned is just like kind of just share that aspect of, or just be around the people who are appreciative of that nature of who I am. They enjoy and embrace it and appreciate it. And, I know we're all not for everybody, but and I really do. I really try to. I mean, I am humble. Like I'm a very humble
Yeah.
person. Like I don't want. I'm. But at the same time, when people are like, "Wow, you did what? You were fourth in the world. You were, and the
NCAA
Olympic
champ.
trials, and
Yeah.
yeah." And they're like, and I'm like, I've part of me was like, oh yeah, yeah, whatever. I used to do that, yeah. And then there's the other part of me that's like, you know what? Thank you so much for noticing that about. And I like, yeah, I really worked hard. That was such a great part of my life, and that was pretty amazing what I
Pretty
did,
badass.
and really, yeah, totally. And I really want to embrace that, because it was a great, and it's still, who knows what tomorrow can bring. So that's the part, you don't know. Like I'm starting to paddle now. Who knows what that could turn into, and
Don't
I,
do what
I
Laird
want to
did.
see if there is a
You hear Laird Hamilton? I mean, Gabby's husband.
yes, yes.
Did you hear the story about when he went out
Which,
paddle without an
well,
EPOP? They didn't back in the day. He was on
Uh-huh.
Kauai, and I think he was going to go to Lanai or whatever the.
Okay.
And when he started off, he could sit there and see the island, so he just
Uh-huh.
took off. And then the
Okay.
fog came in.
Oh.
This is pre, satellite phones and EPOBs and all the other things that they
Right.
have for safety. This was just him getting on a
Oh
boat going,
no.
I'm going to get over there. She said that they weren't married yet, and
Okay.
all of a sudden the cloud lifted and there were no islands. Like
Oh my God.
he was out in the middle of the ocean now with nothing in sight,
Oh.
and he got saved. A boat happened to go by and pick him up and saved him.
Oh,
And I'm like,
lucky. I mean, that's it's scary because I have the same kind of personality. I did the same thing on a smaller scale, not a layered scale, but I did the same thing one day. I was at the beach and the mile buoy was out there and I could see it. And I'm like, I'm gonna go out there. I mean, when I got out there, I didn't realize how were most people how like crazy it was. Like I didn't think it was that far. Most of my races were 6 miles. Like going out to the mile buoy and back can't be that difficult, whatever. But I had like a helicopter hovering over me. I had boats coming up to me going, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine. Like I'm just working out." But yet, in other people's eyes and other people's perspective, it was like I was lost at sea and like I shouldn't be this far out. And what is she doing out here all by herself? And, I'm like, I just went to the mile buoy. Like I could see it from shore. It wasn't that big a deal. Um, Considering like I raced, 6 or 7 or 8 miles. Like what's how could that be so difficult? But yeah, not thinking about the fog and what the potentials are, I guess. Yeah. But I think I did bring a cell phone with me, so I did have that aspect.
yeah,
So I wasn't as you know, I had some coverage, but but yeah, it's interesting how people have that perspective. Here this helicopter's hovering over me, thinking like I'm lost at sea. So
be
what
thankful.
we think is normal or fun, yeah, others like are looking at us like we're crazy. So um
You're like,
yeah.
Shaka, I'm good, I'm good.
It's like these people are crazy. They're stop bothering me. But yeah, they were
So,
just
so when are you writing
concerned,
the book
which
about the Amy Linnen life?
again, it's a great question. I actually started writing it when I was in college, and something I always said, like the title I always thought would be like how to write a book. And because you know, again, it wasn't my forte. It was like how to write and how to formulate and how to, you know, make sure that all the grammar and punctuation is correct. But I started that idea in college, and because I've been through so much from my mom had she has a rare case of 2 uteruses and 2 cervixes when she was born. So for me to even be here and conceive a healthy child and go full term, that was the start of my life. Like,
That's
how did I
crazy.
even get to full term in her pregnancy, where um, the chances of her conceiving are like 3%, and then also going into like delivering and having a healthy child when her uterus is like half the size of a normal human uterus. So like I started off that way. I was born with my feet like curled up where my toes would touch the inside of my shins because I was so squished inside her uterus. So I had like corrective bars on my feet from when I was born. And then 6 months later I had this gnarly staph infection. They didn't know it was cat scratch fever or leukemia. And I was just a little baby, and I had this like large infected lymph node that was like over the size of a golf ball for a 6 month old. It was,
Oh,
so that would had to have surgery on. And I was, they didn't know if the surgery would kill me or I would survive. They didn't know what it was. So they took the chance. I thought it was staph, right? And, I healed from that and moved on. And then when I was 10/11 years old, I was playing soccer. I fractured my foot. And all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, I'd come down with like this gnarly flu or some kind of illness where I had like 104 fever. I was throwing up. I was so sick. And meanwhile, what really happened was I developed a staph infection inside the bone of the fractured ankle. and it was undetected for 6 months. And finally, I was hospitalized because the infection had nowhere to go. It was
Yeah.
inside the bone, and it started eating away the bone. Eventually, it looked like a bug bite on the outside of my ankle, and that was the only, indicator that I had this infection. Because for 6 months,
You're fine.
I'm thinking everything's fine. Yeah, I 2 weeks later, from this from this little flu, whatever I had, I
Yeah.
healed up. Doctors gave me some medicine, and I'm fine. 6 months later, like there's a hole in my tibia that is the size of like a $50. I don't even know how I was
Came
walking on
through.
that foot. And when I was hospitalized, the infectious disease doctor goes, one, we're surprised you're alive. You should have died in January of 1993. Two, we might have to amputate your leg because there's so much damage to the bone and the bone marrow. And three, you're allergic to penicillin, so we don't know how to cure this infection without killing your liver and your kidneys and still curing the infection in your body. So at that early age, I went through like several surgeries. I had intravenous antibiotics for months, for 6 months, like 3 times a day, making sure that I'm not overdosed with these high potent antibiotics. And then and then eventually came out of that, and was faced with just figuring out how to get my life back into my love for sports, because that's really kept me motivated. I was out of sports for so long, um, that I just tried to figure out how do I heal, how do I get back. And the damage that it did to me physically, at the time, you know it seemed to me, it seemed minor, but mentally as an adult now, it's like, wow, I can't believe what I went through. And all that trauma has, like, all that stuff has built up over the years. So it's like I've learned to really appreciate where I came from, and just appreciating how I got here. And I think that kind of built a little bit of like my character and just my appreciation for life. Yeah.
I'll tell you right now. This is the cool part about the podcast because,
Yeah.
people would go, "Oh, it's Amy Linnen, NCAA champ, pole vault, fourth in the world, Olympic hopeful, blah blah," and would never know any of this, right? I mean, like
No.
you just be like,
And
"Oh,
it,
gosh, she's so lucky."
yeah, I'm 5'10". The infection that was in my ankle destroyed my growth plates. So I had to have surgery that actually fused the growth plates in both my ankles. So I call myself like a false advertisement for the fact that I'm walking around with the DNA of a genetic makeup of someone who might be like 6'1", because my arms are 6'4" from like
Yeah,
fingertip to fingertip. You're supposed to be somewhat relative in height to your arm in the wingspan. So the doctor said like I lost like potentially like 3 inches of my total height. So being like 5'10" or
that's
5'10" and a
all.
half, it kind of depends on what leg I stand on. The doctors did a great job, trying to guess like to make the both legs grow at an equal pace and around the same height. So, I have a little bit of a discrepancy in that area, but I lost like a 3 potential inches of my final height. So who knows what life could have been for me if I didn't go through that. Maybe my job as a model would have came true, or maybe I would have played volleyball, or who knows what I would have done with my
You'll
life.
never
But
know.
and I'm just happy with, I don't like regret any of it. I would never change it. It just makes me who I am.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's why like a book
Yeah.
or you know a different avenue of telling your story would help other
Yeah.
people.
I think, that's the whole reason I'm a teacher, is like
Yeah,
I have so many cool stories and so many little, avenues of life that I've explored, from being an ocean lifeguard to, from being an American Ninja Warrior to like, whatever aspect of life I really dove in. I really dove in head first and really explored every avenue to make it the most I could. But in the back of my mind, I always said like, well, the better and the more exposure and the more things I introduce myself to, the better I can be as a teacher and share and connect with like my students. So, if someone comes up to me, like even just random people on a plane, that this is relative to your travel part, because this is where conversations on a plane, you never know who you're going to sit next to. And the guy next to me in my last trip, he's a pilot from Vietnam, and no matter what he talked about, I had some relevant information or story that I could converse with him about, which is, it makes it so much more engaging in conversation when you get to meet new people that you can go back and say, oh, or, like I have some knowledge of that or some experience with this. And that's what makes for good conversation, is to have maybe some empathy or some understanding of where they've been or what they've seen or what they've been through. So that's another reason why I kind of just get out there and explore and just make the most of it.
Totally agree. I mean, I'm gonna ask you, of all the places you've been, what's been the most influential place you visited? Not lived in, but visited.
um, that's a good question. I went to Taiwan for a competition. I traveled from Hawaii over to Japan and then Japan to Taiwan. And then I got to go like on a 3 or 4 hour bus ride south, and I don't even know the name of the city. But it just showed me another aspect of life. Like while have our daily life in our own here in whether it's Hawaii or California,
Yeah.
we wake up in our beds, we go to work, but like there's so much other life and the way people live their lives out there. And when I went to Taiwan in this very rural area, it's like, wow, like the architecture, the food, like the way people live, their their purpose in life and like what their daily day looks like. It's just so different.
Yeah.
And from the hotel and the bed and what it looked, what is valued. Like, I mean, the bathrooms, like there's no shower curtains, everything's wet, there's nothing to like
Yeah.
separate the bath and the toilet and the sink. So like it's just an interesting, all these different concepts. But I think when you travel to these places that are just so different, it really opens your mind to knowing that there's not just one way to live life and that there's people out there who are doing things so differently. So I think that would be just because it's just so different.
And it kind of
Definitely
gives
other
you
places.
a little gratefulness for gratitude towards everything you have here.
Yeah. I did a cross country trip, and even in our own country, there was a part in Wyoming. I got out of the car and I just felt so small, because the land around me was just massive, and you know I felt like almost like I was in a vacuum. It felt like that's how small I was. Like, imagine if you were in a barrel of a wave or just something that was, you're just in this vacuum and you almost like it's so silent and so there's nothing around except just this massive land. It just kind of makes you really appreciate like how how significant we are, but also how insignificant we are. It's like we're just these little things in this world.
I always look at, see, it's so weird you say that because I tend to do that too. Like if I go to, it doesn't have to be the Grand Canyon. It could be just a mountain that I see or a big rock by the
Yeah.
ocean. And I go, that rock's been
Hmm.
here for tens of thousands of years. Like I'm just a
Yeah. Yeah.
blip of a blip of a blip compared to what that rock
Yeah.
has seen and gone through,
Right.
and you kind of go, okay, how much really matters when you
Hmm.
look at the ocean or you look at a waterfall and you go, that waterfall's been here. It's a young waterfall. It's a 1,500 years old. And you're like,
Right. Right.
you hope you make it 80 years on this world, and make whatever impact you can while you're here. And that
Exactly.
waterfall's just going to keep flowing without you.
Oh, it's
That
been so
vacuum.
awesome. It's been so awesome to chat with you, and I hope we get to chat again soon.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
want to end I don't want to end our conversation. I really enjoy speaking with you. I have duties to attend to
Yep.
with my little kids today, and I'm gonna be helping them get into their cars and sending them off with their parents. And and I really hope that I learned so much, about you and your podcast, and hopefully you learned a bunch of different little things about me. But it's just an honor to have had the time to talk and share my story. And give other people maybe a little more insight of what has made me and why I did all the things that I did, and how I overcame and to be successful, or whatever successful looks
Sure.
like. But I feel really honored to have that opportunity to talk with you today.
Appreciate. What's the best way for my listeners to follow up with you? Is it Instagram?
Uh, yeah, I would say Instagram. Instagram's the greatest way. You can direct message me on there, or follow along on my stories
5'10"
and my
blonde.
posts and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Yeah, 510 Blondie. It was originally my AOL screen name. I from when Instant Messenger was important, like
Yeah.
significant and like a thing. But yeah, it was my first. I was like, ooh, what should I? It's changed. It usually just was Amy Linnen. But I had a friend, he kind of like told me, he's like, if you're
So
moving
you
here to Hawaii, like, maybe get an alias just to just cover yourself. You never know.
yeah.
So I kind of took that advice, but I just think it describes me a little bit more. I'm 5'10" and I'm blonde and I
Blonde.
love
There
it.
you
So
go.
5'10" Blondie. And it has some history. I love that name. So
Well, I'll put the links
yeah.
on my website so any of my listeners can go to my website and then just click right over to everything you
All
got.
right, that's great. Yeah.
So
Yeah, I appreciate that.
I appreciate the time. Enjoy your evening, and
Thank you. Thank you.
can't wait to stay
Who
in.
knows what's going to happen? Actually, I'm going to paddle practice after this. So,
Of course you are.
the storm has the storm has turned up the water here. So we'll see how well the conditions are. But yeah, going to do outrigger and get with my team and go practice. So that'll be fun.
Enjoy yourself. Appreciate the time. Thanks,
All
Amy.
right. Thank you. So nice to meet you.
You too.